In the month of October, I consumed 100 cans of sardines, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about some updated blood work along with some results that I experienced. I began my sardine consumption journey in September when I did my very first sardine fast. I was only aiming for 3 days, but I ended up going 7 days. Since that first sardine fast, I've been running a bunch of different experiments. And in this one, I wanted to see how 100 cans of sardines would affect my blood work. In the month of October, I did 4 sardine fasts. I did 2 sardine fasts that were 4 days long, 1 that was 3 days long, and 1 that was 10 days long. I ended up eating 102 cans of sardines in addition to just my normal carnivore diet on the days that I wasn't fasting. On sardine fast days, I would eat anywhere between 3 to 6 cans, and on the days that I was eating carnivore, I would still eat 1 to 2 cans just to make sure I was going to hit my, 100 can goal. A couple of things I was interested in here was, number 1, if my uric acid levels would rise. I've had that question from several of you, so I wanted to make sure I tested that this time. I was also wondering if I'd have a substantial rise in mercury. I've had a lot of people either ask about it or make comments on my videos about the mercury levels in sardines, so I really wanted to make sure I tested that this time around so that we could see. The final test I got was another OmegaCheck. The OmegaCheck measures your omega-3s and your omega-6s in a few different ratios. So let's dive into my baseline OmegaCheck. I took this test on day 3 of a sardine fast. At that point, I'd been averaging 1 can of sardines per day for 2 months. So the OmegaCheck overall was an 8.6. My arachidonic acid to EPA ratio was a 4.9. My omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was a 4.3. My total omega-3s were 8.6. My EPA was a 2.8. DPA 0.9. DHA 4.9. My total omega-6s were 37.1. My arachidonic acid was 13.8. And my linoleic acid was 21.4. So the initial OmegaCheck after 2 months of averaging a can of sardines per day, I was looking pretty good. Everything was looking solid. So I didn't expect to see any, giant changes here. Before we go into the results though of the after 100 cans of sardines, I wanted to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Element Electrolytes. When you're fasting, you want to make sure that you're getting enough hydration. And one of the ways that I do that, anytime I'm sardine fasting, I'll have 1 or 2 of the Element sparkling waters. I especially love the black cherry lime and the grapefruit flavor. Those are kind of my jams right now. I also love that all of the sparkling water is free from maltodextrin, so it makes it an excellent option for the carnivore diet and for sardine fasting. I also really love the raw unflavored electrolytes, especially for those that are starting a carnivore or ketogenic diet. A lot of people don't realize that in the beginning of carnivore or keto, you're going to be losing a lot of water weight, and when you're losing water weight, you're going to be losing electrolytes. Your body releases a lot of that water when you're not consuming carbs anymore, and your electrolytes can get out of whack, so I always make sure to recommend at least 1 packet of the raw unflavored first thing in the morning so that you're not getting dehydrated, and it also can help with the worst of the keto flu symptoms. So Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. Head over to the link in the description. It's drinkelement.com/Jenny Mitich. That's DRINKLMNT.com/Jenny Mitich and get your free sample pack with any order today. So now let's take a look at my updated OmegaCheck after 100 cans of sardines. For this test, I made sure I gave myself a bit of a washout period. So I ended my 10-day sardine fast on October 31st, and I didn't get this test done until the 6th of November. That way I could give my body a little bit of time to kind of, I don't want to say clear out the effects of the sardines. At least then I know that the results wouldn't be like heavily skewed because I had consumed sardines that day. So my OmegaCheck was a 7.1. My arachidonic acid to EPA ratio, 5.9. My omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was a 5.8. My total omega-3s, 7.1. My EPA, 2.2. My DPA, 1.1. My DHA, 3.8. My total arachidonic acid was a 12.8. And my linoleic acid, 26.4. So a couple of things. We did see some slight drops in some things. I went from an 8.6 to a 7.1 for the OmegaCheck, but the 7.1 is still considered excellent. My arachidonic acid to EPA ratio went up just the tiniest bit, but still considered very low, which is what you want. My omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, still good. It did go up a little tiny bit, but still considered very low. I saw a little bit of a drop in my EPA. That makes sense. I hadn't consumed sardines in 6 days when I took this test, but I did see see a slight rise in my DPA up to 1.1, and then my DHA went down about a point, down to 3.8 from a 4.9. I did still see another about point drop in my arachidonic acid, and my linoleic acid jumped up a little bit, I think 4 or 5 points. So not eating sardines for 6 days only had the tiniest amount of impact on the positive benefits of eating those sardines in the first place. I'm wondering how long those positive effects will last. Like, if I stopped eating sardines on October 31st and then didn't eat another sardine all the way through November and tested the OmegaCheck again, would I still see, you know, the high amounts of omega-3, the lower amounts of omega-6, my omega-6 to omega-3 ratio being so low? Like, how long would those benefits last? Because if that's the case, that's pretty hardcore. I mean, that lasts for a pretty long time. That's exciting. But also I ate 102 cans of sardines, so maybe it was just kind of like an overload, an overabundance of omega-3s, and that kind of lasts for a longer period of time. I think next time I run this test, I think I'm going to do that. I'll eat a bunch of sardines, get the OmegaCheck done, and then not eat any sardines for like a month. Run it again and just to see how long these positive effects last. Let's take a look at my uric acid. It came in at a 6.1, and that is a little bit higher than I am normally at. Typically, I'm between 3 and 5, and this has been reported by lots of people that your uric acid can rise a bit if you're consuming a lot of sardines. And if that's the case, people that are experiencing gout or have had gout flare-ups in the past, it might not be a good idea to consume this many sardines. I know Dr. Boz has talked a lot about uric acid and gout and sardines and all that kind of stuff, so I'll link a few of her videos in the description below if you'd like to learn more, but that was really interesting. It definitely didn't go up substantially, not to a level where I would be concerned about it, and I've never had any issues with gout. I don't have gout, so that's not something that's going to like cause a flare-up or anything. There's nothing to flare up. But yeah, that was really interesting. One of my viewers, Virginia, really wanted me to run that test, so I did, and yeah, 6.1. Let's take a look at mercury levels. I have had so many comments from people talking about, oh, well, aren't you concerned about mercury? If you have even a can a day, your mercury levels are gonna be through the roof. And here's the thing. Sardines are very small fish. Typically, the only fish that are really accumulating large amounts of mercury are your very large fish, your longer-lived fish. Sardines are very small. They don't live very long. They're very low on the totem pole when it comes to like the food web, so they're eaten very quickly by larger fish. They just don't have the time to accumulate the amount of mercury that would be in like a tuna, a shark, a salmon, things like that. But also, even if you're only consuming larger fish, you have to eat so much of it in order to see any kind of significant rise in mercury levels. The way I like to think of this is, you know, in Japan, they're eating a ton of seafood, and this is just not something that they worry about. And then you get over to the United States and we barely eat any seafood, and then people freak out about the mercury levels. It's like, it's just not something that I worry too much about, but I know that people like to see the data, so I got this measured. Now, I've done a mercury test in the past. Baseline amount of mercury for me was a 1.4. And you might be like, oh my God, that's terrible. That's normal. That's an insignificant amount of mercury. Everyone's gonna have a little bit. We live in a very polluted world. You know, we don't know what's in our water. We don't know what's in our furniture. There's just so much around us. When mercury starts to become an issue is if in your blood you have levels above a 10. That's when it's gonna start to be an issue. And people typically only see that if they're like working in a factory where they're working with mercury, or if there's some kind of their exposure, you know, to it. It's not something you typically are getting just from eating fish, but let's see what the updated result was. After 100 cans of sardines, my mercury was a 1.7. So like I said, baseline 1.4. After 100 cans of sardines, it was a 1.7. I don't consider that a rise. You know, you're going to see variance, a range of numbers. So if I was to test this every month, I could see that I have a range of things, but 1.7, that's nothing. That's nothing at all. I don't feel any ill effects from eating 100 cans of sardines in a month. I feel very good, actually. I felt really, really good after that 10-day sardine fast. Man, there's nothing like being in hardcore ketosis to really up the energy levels. My brain was so clear. I had so much energy. I was able to just get so much stuff done. So what are some key takeaways from this experiment? Sardines are an excellent way to raise your omega-3s and improve your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Number 2, sardines are low mercury. You are not going to get mercury poisoning even if you consume lots of sardines like I did. The third takeaway is that sardine fasting is highly effective for weight loss, lowering your blood glucose levels, raising your ketones, and burning fat. My fourth takeaway is that eating this many sardines did not raise my uric acid too much. I'm wondering though that, I am healthy. I've never had an issue with gout. So I'm wondering if that rise up to a 6.1 would have any kind of detrimental effects for somebody that does have gout or has experienced gout in the past. That is an interesting question. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. In about 10 days, I'm going to be releasing the results of my 10-day sardine fast that I mentioned in this video, and there is an updated DEXA scan in that video. And man, there were some really interesting visceral fat readings on that DEXA scan, so you're not going to want to miss it. Be sure to head over to jennymitich.shop for all of your carnivore diet themed apparel needs. This is my BBB&E t-shirt. This one is available on the site along with 5 other designs. We have t-shirts, hoodies, kid clothes, coffee cups, so much more. Be sure to use code RIBEYE15 to get 15% off of your order. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And with that, I will see you in the next video.